All right, we're going to go over the fourth, fifth, and sixth one of these two-way tables and talk about the relationship between the two variables that they had. So here we go. This first one wondered if the class you were on affects if you survive. So here's what happened. We determined that the explanatory variable was this over here on the left. Okay. So because that was the explanatory variable, then these over here were my denominators. So that's why then I did 120. See, I did like the denominator out of the 322 first class. 100 of them survived. Out of the 322 first class, 202, oh, these ones survived. The 120 died. So another thing that we talked about today is when you have the area where your denominators are, that's the section that you won't have to have any numbers there. Okay, so that might help you know where do you have numbers missing. So since these were my denominators, I will have no numbers right here. Okay, now then I go in every single time. Of the 277 second class ones, 162 died and 115 lived, and so on. Now, you also do the totals of this. You do this. Some people wanted to leave that off. So of the 2206 on the ship, 1503 of them died and 703 of them lived. So that's my 1503 over 2206 and 703 over 2206. Now, that is the total. So the total you have, this is your marginal. The one, so if you're like now wondering, okay, what do I compare? Well, the one that you have the totals for, that's the one that you compare the others to. So here's what that means. Here's a total. What does 68% mean? That means 68% of the Titanic died. Wow, 68% of the Titanic died. Okay. But then we see, okay, so then we're wondering, all right, how did the other classes fare compared to 68%? Well, look at that. I can see first class died at a much, much lower rate than 68%. And second class was also a lower rate. Third class and crew died at a higher rate than the total, the overall percent that died. So that's what I'm going to talk about. So I can see that the fact that you were in a class, it affected your survival. This is not independent. Not independent. This would be independent. Your class, nothing to do with this because the percents are the same. The percents stay the same. All right, so therefore, here's our conclusion, our three-part conclusion. First thing, state what you know. The survival rate is not independent of class. Second thing, elaborate. The fact that you were in first, second, third class or crew affected the rate at which you survived. Third thing, statistical evidence. So I have that. First and second class. So you know what? I don't want to write very much, just like you don't want to. So I'm going to state this as succinctly as possible, giving numbers to support and saying something about all the categories. Okay, so here is how I thought I could do it with the shortest amount of work, but make sure I covered my bases, numbers, and said something about all the categories. So here I said, look, first and second class had a lower death rate than overall, because that's what I'm comparing to. So look, first and second class had a lower death rate than overall. 37%. I went ahead and rounded to whole numbers by then. I was like, they're way different. So I'm just going to round to whole numbers, make it easy. 37% and 58% versus 68% overall. All right. Now, on this next one, could have even said something different. So look here. I said, when I was thinking about doing this answer key, third class and crew had a lower survival rate. So I talked about this and I compared it to that. But you could have said something else. Maybe you still wanted to talk about the death rate. You could have said third class and crew had a higher death rate than overall. And you said 75% and 77% versus 68% overall. Okay? So the key on your statistics support is say something about every category and include the numbers to support your statement. All right, let's see how you did on this next one. Here, if you think about what's the explanatory, well, I'm thinking that your gender is going to may have an effect on your body image, not the other way around. I don't think body image is going to tell me what gender you are. Okay, so here's my explanatory. So these are my denominators down here. That means I will not have anything in that little line right there, if you're wondering about what goes on. So I had all my fractions. You can see these here. So now remember, you compare the conditional to the totals, so the marginal. So here I had the totals, like 71.3% think they're just right. Well, see how the others compare to that. So I'm going to compare them and see if they are within 1 percentage point, and they are not. So yeah, your gender is affecting your rate at which you think yourself just right. Okay? And same thing with the others. Yes, look at these overweight. They think of themselves differently than 19.6%. So that affected it. So I can tell, I got this. The fact that you are one thing is affecting it, the rate. So they are not independent. Okay? So that's what I do. 3-part conclusion. Here we go. Gender and body image are not independent. Make a statement. Elaborate. The fact that you are male or female affects the rate at which you think of yourself as just right, overweight, or underweight. For example, say something about every category. Female, so I kind of tried to glump it in to say as little as possible, but yet still cover everything. So I said this: females think they are just right and overweight at a higher rate than overall. Okay, and so then I did numbers. Here's how I did my numbers. 74 versus 67 for just right, and 21 versus 16 for overweight. All right? And then the last category, the underweight, I probably should have said something like males have the higher rate of thinking they are underweight than overall. Here I compared it to the females, but I did, I compared 17 to 5. So that's interesting. I didn't do a good look at that. Oh, you know what else? That's interesting. Quick discussion on all of these. I compared males and females. Remember, if there's just 2 categories, and a lot of times you would do that with gender, you can just compare them to themselves. Interesting. But if there's more than 2, definitely make sure you're comparing to the total. All right, last one. Man, this is an interesting problem. The explanatory variable was you getting out of the hospital early or not. Insurance companies, this is big bucks, big bucks. So if insurance companies think they can push you out and release you a day or 2 earlier, they want to. But they want to make sure that you're going to stay out. If you're going to have to come back and be rehospitalized, then it's not worth it. So they want to see if you getting out a day or 2 earlier, if that affects the rate at which you have to get rehospitalized. So here we go. That means this top row was the explanatory. So I did the 4619 as my denominators. I did these ones on the bottom as my denominators, so I don't have anything in that bottom row there. So I did that. So this is very interesting, okay? What's interesting is if you compared like 13.5 to 11.9, those are kind of a little farther away, but you know what? If I compared them to the marginal like I am allowed to do, they are just barely, but they are within 1 percentage point. Okay? Same thing here. My 86.5 and my 88.1 are within 1 percentage point. So the fact that you were early discharged or not did not change the rate. They were not connected. They were independent. Early discharge did not affect your rehospitalization. Independent, independent, independent. The fact that you are one thing does not change the rate. So here we go. 3-part conclusion. Being discharged from the hospital early or not is independent of you getting rehospitalized. The fact that you were discharged early does not affect the rate at which you get rehospitalized. Do the insurance people like that? Heck yes. They're right now, they're thinking, absolutely. I want to go and I'm going to dismiss these people a day or so early because it's not making a difference as to if they have to end up getting rehospitalized. Okay? I guarantee you there are studies that the insurance companies do on this to see if it is worth it. All right. So for both of these, okay, so remember whenever we have ones that have the rate, then we say how they're the same. So what I'm saying is, look, both early and not early discharged have to be hospitalized at about 12.5%. So I'm saying these two, in fact, let me kind of erase some stuff here. It's getting a little crowded. I'm saying these two are like this 12.5%. Okay. And then whether or not you get early discharged or not early discharged, don't have to go back to the hospital about 87%, 87.5%, I said there. That's my numbers to support it. Okay, so hopefully you know how to handle your explanatory variable. You know which way your fractions need to go. And you know how to compare so that you can decide your relationship. And finally, our 3-part conclusion. All right, good job. Stay with it and keep working on checking for independence.